The iconic winged eyeliner of ancient Egypt was far more than a fashion statement. We are about to peel back the layers of time to reveal a world where makeup was a sacred science, blending powerful magic with advanced chemistry. By the end of this journey, you will understand the true purpose behind those dramatic eyes and fragrant oils, separating myth from reality. How did a common lead-based mineral become a secret weapon for health? Why were the Egyptians buried with their entire cosmetic collection? The answers will change how you see beauty forever. What is one thing you use every day that makes you feel both protected and powerful? Your morning skincare routine was their ritual to honor the gods. In ancient Egypt, the very act of applying makeup was a spiritual practice, a daily duty to uphold the balance of the universe. They looked at their deities and saw beings of flawless, radiant beauty. To mirror that divine appearance was to draw closer to them, to attract their protection and goodwill. This was not about vanity in the modern sense. It was about participating in Ma'at, the fundamental principle of truth, order, and harmony that held all of creation together. Every stroke of kohl, every application of scented oil, was a deliberate act to align themselves with this cosmic balance. A perfectly painted eye was not just a fashion statement. It was a prayer, a small but essential contribution to keeping chaos at bay and ensuring the sun would rise again the next day. Can you imagine the profound sense of purpose that must have accompanied each glance in a polished bronze mirror? That polished bronze mirror reflected an image ready for battle, armed with the most powerful tool in the Egyptian cosmetic kit. Kohl was the signature look, those dramatic, almond-shaped eyes that have captivated us for millennia. But the deep black pigment was far more than decoration. It was a sophisticated paste made from grinding specific minerals into an ultra-fine powder. The most common base was a mineral called galena, a lead sulfide that produced a striking, silvery black hue. For green shades, they turned to malachite, a beautiful copper-based stone. These raw ingredients were not chosen at random. Each held a specific, vital purpose for survival in the harsh desert environment. Imagine the relentless Egyptian sun glaring off sand and water. A thick application of kohl around the eyes acted like natural sunglasses, reducing the sun's blinding glare and helping to improve vision in the bright light. Then there were the flies, constant carriers of disease and irritation. The kohl-specific composition created a subtle, unpleasant barrier that these insects would avoid, offering a daily defense against infection. But the protection went even deeper into the realm of the unseen. The Egyptians believed certain glances or expressions of envy could carry a curse known as the evil eye. They saw the eye itself as a gateway, both for taking in the world and for projecting one's inner power. By dramatically outlining and enlarging the eyes with kohl, they were actively shielding this vulnerable portal. They were building a spiritual fortress, warding off malevolent forces with every application, so that iconic eyeliner was not a fashion trend. It was a multi-purpose tool for physical survival and spiritual defense, a daily ritual that blurred the line between pharmacy, magic, and art. Modern fears immediately leap to the danger of lead, but the Egyptians were not poisoning themselves. They were practicing a form of ancient chemistry so advanced it is only now being understood. That kohl made from the lead-based mineral galena was not a toxic mistake. It was a deliberate and brilliant formulation. Recent scientific investigations have revealed a stunning secret. When the specific mineral salts in Egyptian kohl, like galena, come into contact with skin, they do not simply sit there. They interact with the body on a chemical level. Laboratory studies suggest these compounds could have triggered the skin cells to produce more of a vital molecule called nitric oxide. Think of nitric oxide as the body's own alarm system and repair crew. A surge of this molecule would rally the immune system, sending defensive cells to the area to fight off invading bacteria and viruses. So, that dark line of Kohl around the eyes was not just a physical barrier against flies. It was a chemical factory actively stimulating the body's natural defenses. It was a preventative medicine, a topical antibiotic crafted from the earth itself, working day and night to ward off the eye infections that were so common in the ancient world. The very substance we would fear today was, in their hands, a powerful tool for wellness. This turns our modern assumptions completely upside down, revealing a civilization that saw no separation between the healing arts and the art of beauty. This sacred chemistry demanded equally sacred tools. The creation of Kohl was an art form in itself, beginning with a cosmetic palette. These were not simple slabs but elegant, often ceremonial objects carved from smooth slate or polished schist. Shaped like animals, fish, or abstract forms, they were personal and cherished possessions. On this stone canvas, the raw minerals met their transformation. With a smooth, rounded grindstone called a pestle, the user would patiently crush a small piece of galena or malachite. This was not a hurried pounding. It was a deliberate, rhythmic grinding, reducing the coarse mineral to an ultra-fine, silky powder. Every movement was part of the ritual, a physical meditation that prepared both the substance and the spirit for the day ahead. Once the perfect consistency was achieved, the powder needed a binder. A drop of oil or water was carefully mixed in, turning the dry dust into a rich, workable paste. This is where the application tools came into play, and they ranged from the simple to the sublime. For many, a dampened, frayed radstick was sufficient to pick up the paste and line the eyes. But for the elite, the tools were objects of beauty. Elaborate applicators were crafted from wood, bronze, or even glass. Some were designed with a tiny spoon at one end to scoop the paste and a pointed stylus at the other for the precise application. Can you picture the careful, steady hand required to trace those perfect, sweeping lines? This was not a task done in a distracted moment. It demanded focus, a steady breath, and a calm intention. The entire process, from the first grind on the palette to the final stroke along the lash line, was a mindful practice. It was a daily renewal of one's spiritual armor, a quiet, personal ceremony that connected the individual to the gods, to the cosmos, and to their own inner power. That same careful attention given to the eyes extended to every inch of the body, a quest for skin that was not merely clean, but radiantly flawless. For the Egyptian elite, skincare was a sophisticated art of preservation and protection against an unrelenting environment. The desert sun and dry winds posed a constant threat, capable of parching and aging the skin with brutal efficiency. Their defense was a pharmacy of natural oils, each selected for a specific purpose. Castor oil, thick and rich, was a powerful cleanser that could strip away the day's grime and makeup. Lighter sesame oil provided deep moisturization, sealing precious hydration into the skin. And moringa oil, celebrated for its healing properties, soothed irritations and repaired damage. These were not mere luxuries, they were essential barriers, daily applications that maintained the skin's health and youthful elasticity, creating a living canvas that reflected the ideal of divine perfection. But their knowledge went even deeper. They understood the power of ingredients we still prize today. Honey, with its natural antibacterial qualities, was used to treat wounds and prevent infection in skin preparations. And milk baths, famously enjoyed by Cleopatra centuries later, were already known for their gentle, moisturizing lactic acid, which could soften and smooth the skin. This was a holistic approach where every element served a dual purpose. A honey and milk treatment was not just about feeling pampered, it was a practical, potent recipe for combating the bacteria that could lead to blemishes and for restoring softness stolen by the arid climate. Can you see the entire ritual now? It began with cleansing oils, moved to protective balms, and was punctuated by these powerful, natural treatments. Their vanity case was, in truth, a masterfully assembled survival kit, a testament to a civilization that viewed a clear, luminous complexion as a direct reflection of cosmic harmony and personal vitality. The quest for flawless skin was sealed with a final, sacred layer, a fragrance that did more than just please the senses. Scent was the breath of the gods, and to wear it was to embody their very essence. Perfumery in ancient Egypt was not a minor luxury, it was a major national industry, a sophisticated craft that turned rare resins and delicate flowers into bottled divinity. They created solid perfumes and richly scented oils using the land's most precious ingredients. Frankincense, with its sharp, clean aroma, was believed to purify the air and carry prayers to the heavens. Myrrh, deeper and more somber, was associated with death and rebirth, used in embalming to preserve the body for eternity, and from the Nile itself came the intoxicating fragrance of the lotus and the lily, symbols of creation and rebirth, whose scent was woven into celebrations of life. Capturing these fleeting floral essences required a process of astonishing ingenuity called enfleurage. It was a patient, meticulous art. Petals were carefully laid upon a layer of purified fat spread over a wooden frame. For days, sometimes weeks, the fragile flowers would infuse their soul into the grease, which greedily absorbed their volatile perfume. The spent petals were replaced with fresh ones again and again, until the fat was saturated with an almost impossibly potent concentration of scent. This fragrant unguent could then be used as a solid perfume directly on the skin, or the aroma could be transferred into oil. Can you imagine the dedication, the countless petals required for just a single jar of this precious substance? Each application was therefore an act of immense value, but this was not mere personal adornment. Specific scents were the exclusive domain of specific deities. The goddess Hathor was intimately linked with the scent of myrrh, while Ra was honored with frankincense. To anoint yourself with a particular fragrance was to invoke that god's presence, to attract their favor, and to temporarily become a vessel for their power during religious ceremonies. You were not just wearing a pleasant smell, you were wearing the identity of a god, walking the earth as a divine being, your very presence a fragrant prayer that blurred the line between the mortal and the immortal. These divine fragrances and potent cosmetics demanded containers worthy of their sacred purpose. The vessels themselves were far from simple pots. They were masterpieces of craftsmanship designed to protect and honor their precious contents. Alabaster was the material of choice for the most elite cosmetic jars. This luminous, semi-translucent stone was more than just beautiful, it was functionally brilliant. Its dense, cool nature acted as a natural insulator, shielding delicate oils and unguents from the degrading heat of the Egyptian sun. Imagine a slender jar carved from a single block of this milky stone, its surface polished to a soft sheen that seemed to glow from within. Then there was faience, a dazzling ceramic material the Egyptians invented to mimic precious turquoise and lapis lazuli. This was not mere clay, it was a sophisticated composite of crushed quartz, sand, and minerals, fired to create a vibrant, glassy surface in brilliant blues and greens. A small faience pot, perhaps shaped like a lotus bud, would have held kohl or a precious salve, its color alone symbolizing life, rebirth, and the waters of the Nile. For those who could afford it, cosmetic kits were stored in elaborate carved wooden boxes, fitted with small compartments and sliding lids to keep every tool and pigment secure. But the true significance of these containers is often etched right onto their surfaces. They were frequently inscribed with the cartouches of pharaohs or the names and images of gods. This was not about branding in a modern sense. It was a declaration that the substance within was fit for a deity and that its use connected the owner to divine and royal power. The presentation was absolutely part of the ritual. To open an alabaster jar inscribed with the name of Hathor was to participate in her grace before a single drop of perfume ever touched your skin. The container was the first step in the ceremony, a beautiful, tangible promise of the transformation to come. While Kohl guarded the eyes with its dark, protective power, a second color offered a different kind of magic. The vibrant green pigment made from malachite was a direct link to the heart of life itself. This was the color of lush vegetation, of the papyrus sprouting from the Nile's banks, and most importantly, the sacred skin of Osiris, the god of the afterlife and rebirth. When an Egyptian applied this green paste to their eyelids, they were not just adding a splash of color, they were actively channeling the regenerative force of this beloved deity, inviting his power of renewal into their own being. This connection made green the color of fertility and eternal life, a promise that death was not an end, but a transformation into a new, vibrant existence. It is no surprise that this pigment was found in tombs, intended to aid the deceased in their journey to the afterlife, but how was this color used in the world of the living? Often it was not a matter of choosing between black coal or green malachite. They were used in tandem, creating a dramatic and deeply symbolic two-tone effect. Look closely at the statues of great pharaohs or the detailed tomb paintings of noble women. You will frequently see the eyes outlined heavily in black coal, while the area directly above the eyebrow and extending onto the temples is painted a brilliant, luminous green. This was a deliberate visual code. The black coal defined and protected the eye itself, the window to the soul. The green malachite, applied to the brow and beyond, symbolized the life force emanating from that soul, the fertile power of Osiris radiating outward. Think of it as wearing two layers of divine armor. One shielded your physical and spiritual vision from harm, while the other actively projected vitality, health, and the guarantee of rebirth. Can you envision the powerful statement this made? In a single, painted gaze, an individual embodied both the protective vigilance of the gods and the endless, cyclical promise of life springing from death. This was cosmetic artistry at its most profound, where every color was a word in a silent, sacred prayer. The vibrant greens and protective blacks of the eye were balanced by a flush of life on the cheeks and lips. This was the role of red ochre, a humble yet powerful earth pigment that painted the face with the very essence of vitality. Gathered from the desert, this reddish-brown clay held a profound symbolism for the Egyptians. Its color directly mirrored two of their most sacred sources of life, the rich, fertile silt deposited by the annual Nile flood that made agriculture possible, and the blood flowing through their own veins. To wear this color on the face was to display health, energy, and a direct connection to the land's generative power. It was the opposite of the pallor of sickness or death, a declaration of one's place among the living and thriving. How was this earthy powder transformed into a wearable cosmetic? The process was beautifully straightforward. A small amount of the finely ground red ochre would be placed on a palette, much like the coal. Then it was meticulously blended with a drop of animal fat or a precious plant oil. This was not a simple mix, it was a careful alchemy to achieve the perfect consistency, a smooth, spreadable paste that would adhere to the skin. The result was a buildable color, a stain that could impart a subtle, sun-kissed warmth to the cheeks or a more defined rosy tint to the lips. This was not the stark, painted look of a doll. It was an idealized simulation of the body's own natural flush, the healthy glow of someone in their prime, bursting with life force. In a culture that worshipped rejuvenation and abhorred decay, this cosmetic was a daily reaffirmation of one's own vitality. Can you see the completed ritual now? the eyes dramatically shielded in black and green, the skin anointed with protective oils, and finally, the cheeks and lips touched with the color of the life-giving Nile. Every part of the face became a canvas for a different aspect of their belief, a beautiful, living prayer written in pigment and oil. Yet this radiant, painted face was often crowned with an even more elaborate creation, a masterpiece of artistry and practicality. Wigs were a dominant feature of Egyptian style, crafted from thousands of strands of human hair, sheep's wool, or even date palm fibers. Imagine the sheer craftsmanship, the hours spent braiding, curling, and weaving these materials into intricate, towering structures. But these wigs were far more than a simple fashion statement. In the sweltering, insect-ridden climate of the Nile Valley, they served a vital hygienic purpose. Shaving one's head was a common practice for both men and women of status, a direct solution to the constant threat of lice and the discomfort of the heat. The wig then became a protective, insulating barrier, a layer of cool, ventilated air between the scorching sun and the sensitive scalp. It was a brilliant solution, allowing for personal comfort while upholding an impeccable standard of public appearance. Beyond hygiene, the wig was a walking social resume. Its complexity, size, and materials spoke volumes without a single word being uttered. A simple, short, layered wig might denote a common laborer or a soldier, designed for practicality and movement. But for a noblewoman or a high-ranking priest, the wig was a spectacle. It could be a massive, heavy construction of thousands of tight braids, often interwoven with golden tubes and beads that glittered with every step. The sheer weight and expense of such a piece immediately communicated immense wealth and social standing. Can you picture a court official, their elaborate, shoulder-length wig perfectly symmetrical and gleaming with scented oils, moving through the palace? That was not just hair, it was a crown of authority, a visible manifestation of their place in the rigid hierarchy of Egyptian society. So, while kohl protected the eyes and oils preserved the skin, the wig completed the image, a sophisticated tool for health, a bold declaration of status, and a testament to a culture that understood the profound power of personal presentation. This scented crown was the ultimate fusion of fashion, function, and fragrance. At a lavish Egyptian banquet, the most striking accessory was not a piece of jewelry, but a perfumed cone perched directly atop a guest's elaborate wig. Crafted from a solid lump of animal fat or beeswax, this cone was meticulously infused with precious oils, resins like frankincense, and the essence of lotus flowers. It looked like a graceful, pale horn rising from the intricate braids and beads. The magic began as the evening unfolded. Dozens of bodies crowded into a warm room, the air thick with the smell of food and sweat. This is where the cone performed its slow, deliberate alchemy. Absorbing the ambient heat from the room and the wearer's own body, the solid fat would begin to soften and liquefy at a barely perceptible pace. It did not melt in a messy drip, but in a controlled, steady ooze. The fragrant unguent would seep down through the dense layers of the wig, anointing each strand with its divine aroma. As the scented fat traveled, it created glistening, perfumed tracks through the hair, eventually reaching the shoulders and skin below. This transformed the entire body into a living, breathing source of perfume. Imagine the sensory experience. Instead of a fleeting scent applied once at the beginning of the night, the guest was enveloped in a continuous, fresh wave of fragrance for hours. It was a personal climate control system, a slow-release air freshener that actively countered the less pleasant odors of the gathering, but the significance was far deeper than simple freshness. This melting ritual was a powerful, visible symbol of wealth and divine favor. The ability to waste such precious, expensive perfume in a slow, dramatic melt was a statement of immense luxury. More profoundly, as the fragrance cascaded down the body, It reenacted the sacred act of anointing, a ritual usually reserved for priests and statues of the gods. For one evening, the banquet guest became a living altar, dripping with the very essence of the divine, their presence a constant, fragrant reminder that pleasure and piety were beautifully, sensually intertwined. This meticulous grooming extended all the way to the fingertips and toes, where nail care was a mark of distinction for both men and women of high status. In a society obsessed with purity and presentation, well-kept hands and feet were non-negotiable. They were a visible sign that you were above the grime of manual labor, a walking testament to your place in the social order. To achieve this, Egyptian artisans crafted incredibly precise tools from bronze and copper, small, sharp implements designed for a single purpose, perfect grooming. These were not crude files, they were delicate, almost surgical in their design, used to meticulously shape the nail into a perfect oval and to scrape away every trace of dirt from beneath it. This was a routine of fastidious cleanliness, a daily defense against the unsightly and the unclean, but for special occasions, this maintenance transformed into celebration. During festivals and religious ceremonies, they would often stain their nails and even the palms of their hands with a vibrant reddish-orange dye made from henna. This was not a simple cosmetic choice. The warm, earthy tone of henna echoed the life-giving color of red ochre used on the face, symbolizing joy, celebration, and a heightened state of vitality. Can you picture a grand procession where the elite raised their henna-stained hands in prayer or greeting? Their gestures would have been accentuated by this beautiful, temporary color, making every movement a part of the ritual. This practice reveals a stunning completeness to their beauty philosophy. From the kohl guarding their eyes to the henna adorning their fingertips, every part of the body was considered a canvas for both divine connection and social expression, a holistic art form that truly groomed an individual from head to toe. This polished metal mirror was the final, essential tool in the sacred ritual of self-creation, crafted not from glass but from painstakingly hammered and polished copper, bronze, or even silver. Its surface was a marvel of ancient metallurgy. A servant would have spent hours rubbing the disc with fine abrasives until it achieved a flawless, shimmering finish, capable of capturing a clear, if slightly wavering, image. But the object itself was far more than a functional tool. Its handle was a work of profound symbolism, often carved from wood or ivory into the elegant form of a papyrus stalk, the plant of Lower Egypt representing life and growth. Even more powerful were the mirrors shaped with the face of Hathor, the goddess of beauty, joy, and love, gazing serenely from the base of the handle. When an Egyptian held this object, they were not merely holding a mirror, they were grasping the stem of life itself, or looking into an instrument personally blessed by the divine patroness of adornment. The act of gazing into its depths was therefore a spiritual encounter. You were not just checking for smudged kohl or uneven lines, you were seeking a glimpse of your own divine essence, the fragment of the eternal that resided within you. In that quiet moment of reflection, you were confirming your alignment with the gods, ensuring that the face you presented to the world was a worthy vessel for the sacred power you were invoking with every pigment and perfume. The ritual was incomplete until you saw the goddess, or the symbol of life, in your hand, holding up a perfected version of yourself, a living testament to the beautiful, harmonious order of the universe. This final, meticulous gaze in the mirror was a preparation not just for the day, but for eternity. The elaborate cosmetic kits, the polished palettes, and the precious scent jars we find in tombs were not sentimental tokens left by grieving relatives. They were essential, functional gear for the ultimate journey. The Egyptians conceived of the afterlife as a perfect, physical continuation of their earthly existence, a realm where they would live, work, and even eat, but in an idealized, flawless state. To enter this divine realm and stand before the powerful gods of the underworld, one's appearance was of paramount importance. You could not present yourself to the great god Osiris with smudged kohl or unkempt hair. Your eternal form had to mirror the radiant, perfected beauty of the gods themselves. This is why a noblewoman's tomb might contain an entire vanity set, from her alabaster perfume jars and her faience kohl pots to her delicate bronze nail cleaners and an elegant mirror bearing the face of Hathor. These were not souvenirs of a life left behind. They were the critical tools she would need to perform her daily rituals in the next world, to continually renew her divine armor and maintain her place in the cosmic order forever. Can you envision the profound practicality of this belief? Death was not an end to personal grooming, it was its ultimate elevation. Every stroke of the kohl stick in the afterlife was a reaffirmation of one's identity and purity, a necessary act to remain in the favor of the gods. The tomb itself became a kind of eternal dressing room, stocked with everything needed for the soul to present its most powerful, protected, and beautiful self for all time. So the next time you see a photograph of an ancient cosmetic spoon or a carved kohl tube in a museum, see it not as a relic of vanity, but as a piece of functional eternity, a key to unlocking a perfect existence in the world to come. Behind every sacred unguent and vibrant pigment stood a master of their craft, the professional perfumer. These individuals were not simple shopkeepers, they were revered chemists and artisans, holding a status akin to a high priest of scent. Their workshops were hallowed spaces, often located within the very walls of major temples or the royal palace itself, for their work was considered a direct service to the gods and the pharaoh. Imagine a sunlit room filled with the earthy scent of raw resins, the sweet perfume of crushed flower petals, and the sharp tang of minerals being ground on stone pallets. Here, the perfumer operated like a guarded librarian of ancient recipes. Their formulas were not written down for anyone to see. They were precious, secret knowledge passed verbally from master to apprentice, often within a single family for generations. A single recipe for a temple incense might require the precise measurement of frankincense tears from a specific region, a particular grade of myrrh, and the exact number of lotus petals harvested at dawn. One wrong ingredient or a slight miscalculation in the process was believed to render the substance impure, unworthy of a god's altar, so when a noblewoman anointed her wrists with a precious oil, she was not just applying a fragrance. She was wearing the life's work of a dedicated artisan, a concentrated essence of botanical knowledge and spiritual tradition, all contained within a single, beautiful jar. The polished bronze mirror reflected a face ready for the divine, regardless of whether it belonged to a man or a woman. In the world of ancient Egypt, the sacred rituals of makeup and skincare were a universal language spoken by everyone. The dramatic sweep of kohl guarding the eyes was as common on the face of a pharaoh as it was on a noblewoman. Laborers working under the harsh sun wore it for its practical glare reduction, soldiers applied it for spiritual protection before battle, and scribes lined their eyes to honor the god Thoth, the patron of writing. This was a culture that saw no contradiction between masculinity and makeup, a concept that can feel startlingly modern to us today. Their definition of beauty was not about gender, but about something far more profound, a shared human need for protection, a collective duty to honor the gods, and a clear visual signal of one's place in the social order. A man's carefully painted eyes and anointed skin declared his health, his piety, and his participation in the civilization's core values. Can you see the powerful statement this makes? In a society where every person was a participant in maintaining cosmic harmony, the tools for that participation were distributed to all. The pharaoh, believed to be a living god, used these cosmetics to the greatest effect, his entire presentation a divine blueprint for his people to follow. His radiant skin and perfectly defined eyes were not a sign of vanity, but a manifestation of his power and a model of ideal existence for every man, woman, and child. This universal practice completely dismantles the modern idea that makeup was a feminine frivolity. It reframes it as what it truly was: a fundamental, unisex technology for survival, spirituality, and social cohesion, uniting an entire civilization in a shared ritual of sacred adornment. That polished bronze mirror did not show the same reflection for everyone. The very quality of the cosmetics you used, the containers that held them, and the time you could devote to their application painted a precise picture of your place in society. Kohl was the great equalizer in one sense, used by the pharaoh in his palace and the laborer in the field, but the similarity ended there. For the vast majority of Egyptians, the kohl was purely functional. It was a simple, ground mineral paste stored in a rough, undecorated pot, applied quickly at dawn to shield the eyes from the sun and flies before a long day of backbreaking work. There was no time for an elaborate, meditative ritual. It was a practical act of survival. Contrast this with the queen in her private chambers. Her kohl was not just functional, it was a declaration of immense power. It was made from the purest, finest ground galena, perhaps mixed with a trace of glittering crushed lapis lazuli for a celestial sheen. This precious substance was kept in an exquisitely carved obsidian or gold tube, an object of art in itself. Her application was a slow, deliberate ceremony, assisted by servants, transforming a protective paste into a symbol of unapproachable divinity. The difference was in the details. A peasant might use a frayed red stick to apply their kohl, while a noblewoman used a delicate applicator of polished ebony with a tiny gold spoon at its end. The peasant's cosmetic palette was a simple, worn piece of slate. The elite-owned palettes carved into the shape of sacred animals, inlaid with precious stones, objects worthy of being buried as treasures for the afterlife. This hierarchy extended to every aspect of the beauty ritual. The finest oils, like frankincense and myrrh, were expensive imports, their use restricted to the priesthood and royalty. A commoner would have to make do with simpler, locally pressed castor or linseed oil. The time required for the full ritual was itself a luxury. A farmer could not spend an hour each morning anointing their body with multiple oils, applying multiple cosmetic colors, and arranging an elaborate wig. That time was a commodity only the upper classes possessed in abundance, so while everyone participated in the culture of sacred adornment, the experience was vastly different. Your cosmetic kit was your social resume, written in stone, metal, and pigment. It silently announced your wealth, your proximity to the gods, and your freedom from the relentless demands of labor. The queen's kohl was not merely darker or smoother, it was heavier with meaning, a visible line drawn between the mortal and the divine, between those who simply lived under the sun and those who believed they commanded it. The queen's kohl pot, carved from deep blue lapis lazuli, tells a story of deserts crossed and oceans sailed. This stunning stone did not come from the banks of the Nile. It was mined from a single, remote mountain range in what is now Afghanistan, traveling over thousands of miles through a chain of merchants and middlemen to finally reach an Egyptian workshop. This arduous journey was true for nearly every precious component in the Egyptian cosmetic ritual. Their sacred science of beauty was built on a foundation of global trade, a network that stretched from the heart of Africa to the shores of the Mediterranean. The most coveted resins, frankincense and myrrh, were legendary imports from the mysterious land of Punt, a place so distant and exotic it was considered the personal garden of the gods. Egyptian expeditions would spend months on dangerous sea voyages to bring back these fragrant treasures, which were worth more than their weight in gold. A noblewoman anointing herself with myrrh oil was not just performing a religious rite, she was displaying the far-reaching power of her civilization, wearing a scent that was the direct result of royal ambition and naval prowess. Her vanity case was a diplomatic portfolio, each item a testament to Egypt's economic influence. The green malachite for eye paint might have been sourced from the Sinai, while the red ochre for blush came from the deserts to the west. Even the humble castor oil, used by millions, was pressed from beans traded with neighboring cultures. Can you grasp the immense value of these substances? A small jar of frankincense resin was not merely a perfume, it was a concentrated symbol of international wealth, a luxury so potent it could solidify alliances and prove a kingdom's connection to the wider world. When a pharaoh presented a foreign ambassador with a chest of fine cosmetics, he was not giving simple gifts, he was showcasing Egypt's vast trade networks and its access to the planet's most elusive resources. This transformed personal adornment into a powerful political statement, where every painted eyelid and scented wrist whispered a tale of empire, exploration, and a civilization confident enough to pull the finest treasures of the earth directly into its beauty rituals. This daily application of kohl was far more than a physical preparation, it was an active incantation. The sacred texts of ancient Egypt, carved deep within pyramids and painted onto coffins, are filled with spells meant to be spoken aloud during the very act of adorning the body. These were not silent prayers, but spoken words of power, transforming a simple cosmetic into a potent magical shield. While tracing the dark pigment along the lash line, an individual might recite a spell directly invoking the god Horus, the powerful sky deity whose own eyes were the sun and the moon. The words were a direct plea for his divine vigilance. They would say, "I have painted this eye of Horus upon my face, so that it may watch over me and repel all that is evil." Can you hear the conviction in that whispered declaration? With every stroke, they were not just drawing a line, they were drawing the watchful gaze of a god onto their own flesh, believing that the symbol itself would come alive with protective energy. The ritual was a deliberate fusion of action and word, where the hand performed the physical magic and the voice channeled the spiritual force, each dependent on the other for its full power. For the eyes of a goddess like Hathor, the spells took on a different tone, calling upon her qualities of joy, beauty, and fierce maternal protection. A spell might ask for sacred scent to envelop the wearer, or for beautiful countenance to become their own, making them radiant and untouchable to malevolent spirits. This practice reveals that their entire cosmetic kit was in effect a magical toolkit. The kohl stick was a wand, the fragrant oil was an anointing elixir, and the recited words were the charms that activated their power. Your morning routine is a series of choices, but for them, it was a series of invocations. Each step in the beauty ritual was a deliberate layer of enchantment, a daily rebuilding of a spiritual fortress designed to keep the chaos of the world at bay until the sun rose again. The tomb of Thutmose III's 3 foreign wives offers a breathtakingly intimate glimpse into this sacred art. Sealed for over 3,000 years, their burial chamber contained personal cosmetic chests that were not generic offerings, but the actual, daily-use kits of these royal women. Imagine lifting the lid on one of these wooden chests, its surface still faintly fragrant with cedar oil. Inside, nestled within custom-fitted compartments, sat a collection of alabaster jars, each one cool and smooth to the touch. These were not mere decorations for the afterlife, they were functional, personal possessions. The specific shapes and sizes of the jars tell a silent story of their contents, from slender vials for precious oils to wide-mouthed pots for thick unguents. One alabaster jar might have held a delicate floral perfume, its scent long faded but its purpose clear, while another contained a hardened residue of kohl, the very paste these women used to outline their eyes in life. This is where history stops being abstract and becomes deeply personal. We are not just learning about Egyptian cosmetics, we are peering into the private vanities of three individuals, seeing the specific textures and colors they preferred. Did one wife favor a shimmering green malachite, while another adhered strictly to the classic black coal? Their choices, preserved in stone and pigment, whisper across the centuries about their unique identities and tastes. These well-preserved items prove that the rituals we have discussed were not just theoretical ideals carved on temple walls, they were lived experiences performed with real tools that held both spiritual meaning and personal significance. The tomb of the three foreign wives does more than confirm our knowledge, it adds a human heartbeat to it, reminding us that every sacred ritual was also an expression of a life lived. The allure of the Egyptian gaze did not end at the borders of the Nile. It traveled across the sea, captivating the Greeks and Romans who saw in it a potent blend of exotic beauty and perceived magic. These conquering empires eagerly adopted the use of kohl, though its meaning subtly shifted. For the Romans, lining the eyes became less about cosmic order and more about a statement of wealth, sophistication, and a touch of exotic allure. Roman patricians, always seeking new luxuries, imported Egyptian cosmetic recipes and the precious tools to apply them, making the kohl-lined eye a fashionable marker of the elite throughout the vast Roman world. This was the first great wave of Egypt's beauty legacy, a ripple that spread from the banks of the Nile to the heart of the Roman Forum. Then, after centuries of quiet, the sands of Egypt yielded a secret that would ignite a global firestorm. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 sent a shockwave through the modern world. Photographs of the boy king's solid gold death mask, with its stunning graphic black eyeliner, appeared in newspapers everywhere. Suddenly, the ancient Egyptian aesthetic was reborn with explosive force. The 1920s, already a decade of dramatic social change and bold new fashion, embraced this look completely. Egyptomania swept through art, architecture, and especially beauty. Women of the flapper era, who were cutting their hair short and rejecting Victorian constraints, found a perfect symbol in the clean, severe, and powerfully feminine lines of Egyptian art. They began to emulate the very same almond-shaped, heavily outlined eyes that had once honored the god Horus. This was not a mere costume, it was a declaration of modern identity, using an ancient visual language to express a new kind of power and mystique. Can you see the direct line from a 3,000-year-old tomb to the smoky, dramatic eyes of a 1920s film star? That iconic look has never truly left us. Modern makeup artists and fashion designers constantly return to the well of ancient Egypt for inspiration. The bold, graphic cat eye that defines so many red carpet looks is a direct descendant of those kohl-painted lids. Runway shows frequently feature models with eyes elongated and defined with a stark, black line that would look perfectly at home on a statue of Nefertiti. Even the modern use of metallic eyeshadows in gold and copper echoes the gleam of polished gold and malachite that once adorned the elite. This enduring influence proves that the Egyptians discovered something more than just makeup. They uncovered a fundamental archetype of beauty, one that speaks to a deep human desire for definition, drama, and a touch of the divine. Their sacred ritual, born from the desert sun, has become a permanent fixture in the global language of style. The same alabaster jars that once graced a royal vanity table are now revealing their secrets to modern science. Historians and chemists have joined forces in a remarkable detective story, using the barest traces of residue left in ancient cosmetic containers. Through a technique called residue analysis, they can identify the molecular fingerprints of oils, fats, and resins that have clung to the pottery and stone for millennia. This is not guesswork, it is a direct chemical conversation with the past. One of the most breathtaking projects to emerge from this research is known as the scent of eternity. A team analyzed residues from a collection of jars found in an ancient Egyptian necropolis dating back over 2,000 years. They identified a complex recipe based on a foundation of olive oil or moringa oil, infused with the exact same ingredients described in ancient texts: frankincense, myrrh, and pine resin. Following this precise formula, they mixed and heated the ingredients just as an ancient perfumer would have. The result was a tangible shock, a thick, balsamic fragrance that filled the room. For the first time in centuries, the sacred scent of ancient Egypt was alive again. This was not a modern interpretation, it was the genuine aroma, confirming with absolute certainty the sophistication of their craft. To smell, it is to be transported directly into the presence of a priest or a pharaoh, to understand that their perfumes were rich, complex, and deeply potent. This successful recreation proves that their recipes were not mythical, they were meticulously documented and executed with the precision of master chemists. It verifies that the descriptions of temple incense and royal unguents were not poetic exaggeration, but factual reporting. The air they breathed during their most sacred ceremonies is an air we can now, astonishingly, breathe for ourselves. So where does this leave our understanding of their motives? To label these practices as mere vanity is to miss the entire point. Yes, the Egyptians took immense pleasure in their appearance and felt personal pride in their presentation. But this aesthetic satisfaction was a beautiful byproduct, not the driving force. Their daily routine was a holistic system, a deeply integrated practice where every action served multiple, overlapping purposes. The kohl that enhanced the eye's beauty also medically protected it from infection and glare. The fragrant oils that made the skin luminous also formed a barrier against the desert climate. The very act of application was a spoken spell, a magical defense woven into the fabric of the day. This was not a culture that separated the pharmacy from the temple or the magic shop from the dressing table. All of these elements were fused into a single, coherent worldview. Their identity was not expressed in spite of their spirituality, but through it. To be an Egyptian was to participate in this ritual, to wear your faith and your function on your skin for all to see. The final verdict, then, is clear. What we might dismiss as ancient vanity was, in truth, a profound technology for living. It was a way to navigate a dangerous world, to commune with the gods, to signal your place in society, and to prepare for eternity, all before you even stepped out your door. Their cosmetic kit was, in the end, a survival kit for the body, the spirit, and the soul. So was it all just vanity? The answer echoes from the tombs and temple walls, a resounding no. The Egyptian ritual was a beautiful, complex fusion of science, faith, and social language, a practice that goes far beyond any simple notion of conceit. They were not merely decorating their faces, they were actively aligning their very beings with the divine order of Maat. They were shielding their bodies with preventative medicine crafted from the earth, and proclaiming their identity and status with every color and fragrance. This was a holistic system where the spiritual, the medicinal, and the social were woven into a single, daily act of creation. The next time you see that iconic, dramatic eyeliner in a museum or on a movie screen, look past the style and see the substance. Remember the chemical reaction stimulating the immune system, the whispered spell to the god Horus, and the declaration of a civilization's power and piety. It was all of these things at once. What is one personal ritual you have, perhaps applying a signature scent or a favorite lipstick, that makes you feel truly powerful or deeply connected to something larger than yourself? Share your own modern traditions in the comments below, and subscribe to continue uncovering the hidden truths of our ancient world.